Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Today's topic, we're going to be focusing on making barbecue sauce. So similar to our last video when we were making rubs, I wanted to kind of keep that same format of keeping it super basic and like having a good foundation of how to create rubs and sauces and stuff like that, and leaving space for you guys to basically make your own. So we're going to be talking about certain ingredients that are typically used in barbecue sauces and how to use those in different ratios to figure out, what kind of sauce that you want to make and how to adjust those ratios based off of your preferences. So we're going to be making two sauces in this video. The first one is going to be one that I've been playing around with for a while, and I think it's pretty much influenced by like Texas style barbecue. So it's not as sweet. It's a little bit tangier. And the second one is going to be one that I think growing up in the Midwest, it's probably typical to have a sauce that's a little bit thicker, has more sugar in it. It's just kind of like a flavor profile that I remember eating when I was younger. And so, I was looking for a sauce recipe for this particular place and I couldn't find it. So I figured that, I would take those lessons and those rules that I kind of like preach to other people about making barbecue sauce and see if I can apply it to replicating one that I've never made before. So the second sauce, you'll see me just kind of winging it and adding different things that I think work, and just seeing what happens. So with all that being said, let's get into making some barbecue sauce. All right, so the first sauce that we're gonna make, my house sauce, I guess you could say. Same thing as our rub recipe. This is just kind of like a general base. All right, so we are gonna start with like any barbecue sauce. We're gonna start with some ketchup. I don't know, roughly about a third to a half of that portion in mustard, apple cider vinegar, and Worcestershire sauce. And so this is kind of where I want to make a point that this is the base, right? For me, it's 4 ingredients. It's ketchup, mustard, Worcestershire, and apple cider vinegar. Your proportion of this is up to you. So my proportion is 1 part of it is ketchup, and then the mustard, Worcestershire, and apple cider vinegar are roughly about half, but it also depends on if I'm using this for other things. This is typically my rib sauce. If I'm gonna do something where it's a little bit thinner, I might add more vinegar or Worcestershire instead of ketchup and mustard. So you just kind of play around with, think about the end of the product, what you're gonna be eating it with, what type of viscosity you want with your sauce itself. Make sure that so I have a hand blender, but if you're trying to mix this by hand, make sure you mix the ketchup and the mustard together before you put the apple cider vinegar in there. When you splash the apple cider vinegar in there without incorporating that mustard and the ketchup together, you're gonna have clumps and clumps of mustard just sitting in there. I think you guys can kind of see it right now. That's what you're gonna kind of see throughout your sauce if you don't mix that mustard and ketchup first. Next, we're gonna add some garlic, a little bit of cayenne, just for a little bit of heat, some chili powder. That's gonna add a little bit of depth of flavor. It's gonna be, I'm not really necessarily worried about thickening the sauce, but this will also kind of act as that. So it'll add a little bit of thickness without necessarily adding more ketchup and more mustard and things like that. Lastly, most importantly, is going to be your sugar. People ask me all the time, like, oh, my sauce doesn't taste as sweet, and I ask them, well, how much sugar do you put in? They tend to be a little bit more stingy with the sugar. When I think about barbecue sauce, in most cases, it's really just a fortified, spiced ketchup. Think about it in that way, though. It'll help you to understand like what really goes into ketchup and why it tastes the way it does. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that are like, I guess I don't want to use a word, but it's like umami based, right? With the ketchup and the Worcestershire and all that. But so you have to balance that all out. The other thing that you can do, especially if you're doing a large batch, I would highly recommend that you take your sugar, whether you're using brown sugar or white sugar, to make it like into a syrup with some water. It'll make it a lot easier to mix this up. Kind of like that rub recipe that we did in the last video. Sometimes it can clump around that mustard like I was telling you about, or the brown sugar. So just be mindful of that. All right, we're gonna just take a hand mixer, just put it in here, and then we'll give it a whirl. Alright guys, so this is the sauce right here. It is a little bit thicker. I do like it a little bit thicker like this because especially if you are putting it into as a glaze for ribs and things like that, I like to start with the thicker sauce so I can thin it out. If you start off with a really thin sauce, it becomes harder to make it thicker for other things. Later on, if you want to thicken it, you have to add more ketchup or more this or that, and it changes the flavor of everything a lot. So I'd rather start with something that's thicker, thin it out with a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of water, just to get that viscosity that you want right. The one thing that you didn't see me add into this right now is salt. There's some times where I do the same ratios, and sometimes it pops, sometimes it doesn't. And so I want to make sure that the salt is the very last thing that I add to it. Now, because I'm tasting this right now, it does need a little bit of salt. Everything is kind of like, if you guys make a lot of sauces, you get to a point where everything is kind of hitting. You kind of taste the vinegar, you taste the ketchup mustard base, a little bit of savoriness from the Worcestershire. Everything still kind of tastes muted. That's when we're adding salt. So if you're at that point like I am, put some salt in here. All right, next we are gonna be doing I don't know, I'm kind of winging this one because they're, I was looking for these, for like a sauce recipe that is similar to something that I grew up eating. If you're from like Chicago and you've been to like Carson's Ribs and they have that, really thick molassesy sauce. That's like my earliest memory of having anything that's close to any sort of barbecue, and so that's what I kind of want to do here. I'm gonna add a couple things that I think might work in here, and just see how it tastes. The other thing that you're probably noticing is that we're not doing this in a pint or in a quart container. We're doing this in the pot. So this one I am actually going to heat up. I want to kind of give it some caramelized flavors because there is going to be more sugar in this one. I'm also hoping that the color will get nice and dark. So just like any other barbecue sauce, like we're going to start off with a fair amount of ketchup. So again, this is kind of our base. So here we go. I do want a little bit of mustard, but I don't want it to mute the color, and I also don't want there to be that much mustard flavor in the background. I'm going to add a little bit of mustard, just to kind of give it a little bit of body and a little bit of flavor. Apple cider vinegar, Worcestershire. So as you guys can see, a lot of these barbecue sauces are all the same thing. We're just playing around with ratios, thinking about color, again, thinking about thickness, thinking about how sweet we want it to be. Everything is basically the same thing. So I'm not super stressed out about like, man, I don't know if I have the right ingredients. Let's say you don't have as much, ketchup as mustard one day, and you still you want to whip up a sauce, then just make it a thinner sauce and try to, instead of making it into like a super thick sauce, maybe think about making it into a glaze. So there's different ways around doing this, guys. So you're like, oh man, like I don't know if my ratios are right. Who cares? Like just wing it and make something new out of it, and I don't know, maybe you come up with a new creation that's better than your original one. But with a lot of these sauces that we have, especially from these barbecue joints, usually the base of if they have a very specific rub on their stuff, usually that rub is also used to fortify the sauce, because they want, it's like one of those things where you want to carry that same flavor and those notes from your rub to your sauce and all that kind of stuff. So for that reason, I'm going to be using that basic rub that we made in the last video, and I'm going to fortify it in here. So we're going to add I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons of this rub that we created before. All right, so this is where I'm gonna wing it a little bit to kind of make it different, make it a little more lively. I'm gonna add a little bit of cinnamon to this, right? And a little goes a long way, especially in sauces. The one thing you don't want, cinnamon, cumin, turmeric sometimes, ginger, things like that. They tend to have this effect where, like I said, it's those finishing notes that you really want to be there to have people like, ooh, that's something different, but you don't want them to remember that it's going to be there forever. I remember the first time when I was making barbecue sauce, I wanted to add cinnamon to it, and even though it doesn't seem like a lot, I'm adding a little bit of ginger in here, even though it's not like, you're not seeing it, but it almost had an effect of like doing a cinnamon challenge. Like it kind of coated the palate and it just was not letting go. Okay, another one of those things that I wanted to add into this sauce, because I've heard some places use it, and I had some laying around, is an orange. So I'm gonna squeeze half an orange into this sauce. Again, a lot of it's just kind of adding these new flavors in here. So like I said with this sauce, because we are going to be cooking it and we want to be more caramelized, this one is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm going to put a lot of brown sugar in here. So with these typical sauces, asked to put in white sugar and as well as molasses. But again, like I explained in like that rub video last time, you know, brown sugar is basically just white sugar with different levels of or percentages of molasses in there. So rather than going out and buying a jar of molasses that I don't really typically cook a lot with, I just bought some dark brown sugar that has higher levels of molasses that will, you know, hopefully, you know, deliver that same sort of dark, rich flavor. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take my sauce and we're gonna go up to the stove just to kind of cook this down and see what we got. Oh yeah.
Alright guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed that video of us just kind of recreating two sauces, you know, one that is a non-cooked sauce and one that is a cooked sauce. So if you guys can see the difference between the two, you know, we got this one is a little bit thicker right now because we didn't have to warm this one up. This one looks a lot thinner, but I promise you it will thicken up. But anyway guys, yeah, I just wanted to again show that not everything has to be super scripted. Not everything has to be, you know, perfect and has to, you know, be a certain way. Like you can, let's say if, you know, I only had a little bit of this sauce left and I didn't feel like making a new batch, because I'll be honest with you guys, one of my least favorite things to do with barbecue is making barbecue sauce. I hate it. It's a mess to do, and sometimes like you'll add everything in that the recipe said so and you taste it and it tastes different, and that's one of the things that makes me annoyed. But you know, it happens all the time. I think being able to be, you know, light on your feet, being able to make things up as you go, I think is part of, you know, having fun with barbecue. Like I said before, if we're always just trying to replicate things, it tends to get stale, and then there is a moment of like well, what do you do after you are able to replicate? You just keep doing it again and again. It just, to me, that's not what I'm after. Even though, you know, early in stages of when I was learning how to barbecue, obviously I wanted to learn all those things, but you know, that's really just to build a foundation for you to start doing your own. I'm hoping that, you know, with the rub recipes that we did, with the barbecue sauce, you know, just getting you a little bit more comfortable to be able to make things up on your own and just see how it goes. With the last two videos that we did, with the rub and the barbecue sauce, what we're gonna do in the next video is we're gonna start cooking some ribs. So I know a lot of you guys have waited a really long time for me to do so, and I appreciate your patience, and I figured, hey, because we made you guys wait this long, let's try to do more than one rib video. There's a couple of ideas and things I want to test out that we're going to, yeah, that we're going to see what happens. So there are certain things that I know how to do and certain things that I don't, and we're just going to figure out what it tastes like, how it cooks, what works, what doesn't, and you know, I'm not going to pretend like any of my videos are going to be a success, because sometimes they might not be. You know, that's what I want this this YouTube channel to be. We're going to mess up when we mess up, but you know, as long as we have a good enough base of what we're supposed to be doing, even bad barbecue is pretty good most of the time. But with that being said, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and especially since we got more cook videos coming up, make sure you click that bell to make sure you know when those videos are coming out. I don't specifically know when these videos will come out, especially because I am going to get a little bit busier here in the next couple months. So it might, I expect it to come out regularly, but if it doesn't, don't be upset. All right, they're going to be coming out eventually. All right, so just make sure that you guys are have a way to know when they come out, or you can follow me on Instagram and I'll make sure I post the picture of the thumbnail to make sure you guys know, hey, the video is out. Okay, all right guys, thanks so much. I'll see you guys in the next one.